Yes, indeed, that music confirms it is time indeed for my Sunday sermon. And this week I want to be talking about concerned communities with regard to some of the migrant hotels. And firstly, I want to make it absolutely clear. Obviously, I support the right to peaceful, lawful, law-abiding protest, but in no way condone any violent, disruptive, obstructive protest. But we have to have the courage to talk about what's going on. Just last week, we saw protests that started peacefully, by a concerned community in the northwest of England, in Knowsley, part of Liverpool, over the migrant hotel there. And from about 6 o'clock, it was peaceful. It was a concerned community until, guess what, at around about 8 o'clock, the Communist Party arrived. Yes, because the Communist Merseyside branch, they advertised to arrive at that migrant hotel at 8 o'clock, and that's when the trouble started. Coincidentally, yet the mainstream media and Labour, they didn't mention that. That was funny. They just said it was all caused by the far right. Where's their evidence? It was a concerned community. Where was the mainstream media saying that the Communist Party is actually the hard left? Funny they didn't mention that. Funny they didn't mention that Knowsley is about the safest Labour seat in the country. Not much right-wing support there, folks. Now, over the coming weeks, there are numerous protests being organised and town hall meetings up and down the country. Just in the last couple of days, some 300 people attended a meeting in Dunstable of concerned residents. Local mums, local dads, brothers and sisters, concerned over their sisters and their daughters. And very often, of course, most of the time, these migrant hotels are placed in working class communities. Very often, more often in the north of England, the industrial heartlands, the coastal communities. And it's in some of the coastal communities where tourism is significantly under threat this summer. Why? Because the majority of hotels have been commandeered by one of the big outsourcing companies on behalf of the government. Now, as I say, I support the right to lawful, peaceful protest, and I hope and pray that any future protests are indeed both peaceful and only attended by local, concerned people, understandably anxious about young, illegal migrants hanging around their high streets, hanging around school gates. They come from very different cultures, with very different, often appalling, abhorrent attitudes towards women and girls. And you've only got to just use Google for a couple of minutes to appreciate that, sadly, some asylum seekers have embarked upon murder and multiple incidents of rape in the UK in recent months. Just a quick look at Google and you'll see numerous examples. Just last week, 4 Afghan teenagers were arrested for the alleged assault of a 15-year-old girl at a school in Dover in Kent. You've got schools now sending text messages to parents telling them not to let their children travel home alone. That is utterly shameful. Utterly shameful. And politicians should have the courage to apologise to concerned mums and dads. But already instead, we've got the Tory party, we've got the Labour Party trying to shut down these protests, spreading stories saying that it's unacceptable. The truth is, they're utterly embarrassed by their own incompetent failures. So instead, they're trying to prevent the right to protest. They're trying to smear people. They're trying to stop lawful, local, peaceful protests. But I fear this is just the beginning, folks. Already this year, illegal crossings over the Channel, 86% up on this time last year, at over 2,000 people. If you apply the maths to the 46,000 that came last year, you're going to be looking at 60, 70,000 plus. Where are they all going to go? On the 3rd of January, Rishi Sunak said this was his top priority. Top priority, he said. 6 weeks later, despite him promising new legislation, there's no sign of it, not even a draft, not even a draft of a draft. I tell you, if I was in charge, you'd have a draft out in a week. In the second week, it would be debated through Parliament, and in the third week, it would be done. That was the sort of urgency that the COVID legislation was pushed through. Why can't we do the same with this Rishi Sunak? It's urgent. People are being raped. People are being murdered. This is a national security threat. No ifs, no buts. Roll forward another 9 months. Where's this all going to be? Another 300 hotels plus filled up? But then the government said, oh no, don't worry, we're going to put them into holiday camps. Former pontons and things. Well, that's all just been knocked on the head this week, it appears. Utterly unbelievable. And if you want proof about the hard left appearing, the rise of Antifa, you've only got to look at the concerned community who weren't protesting over migrants. They were protesting in their hundreds yesterday in central Oxford over the council's mad, insane anti-car plans. And there were some young men clad in black clothes, their faces covered in black masks, most likely from Antifa, trying to infer that anybody was, and there's an image on the screen here, trying to infer that anybody who was protesting about these anti-car plans was actually from the far right, an extremist. Really? Do you see what's happening here? They're trying to scare us. They're trying to stop people from that democratic right to peaceful, lawful protest. It's not much consolation, folks, but the word concerned communities actually has come from action groups in the Republic of Ireland. Because believe it or not, it's actually worse there. They've had 73,000 migrants out of a population just over 5 million. That's 1.5% of the whole population. They've filled up 25% of all the hotels in the Republic of Ireland. We're just 1/10 of that. Imagine the situation 10 times worse. Last year in the Republic of Ireland, they had over 300 protests. Here we are mid-Feb, they've already had another 80 or so protests. Again, concerned local mums, concerned local dads. At the front of these protests, prams, pushchairs. And yet, again, the senior politicians, the Taoiseach in the Republic, one Leo Varadkar, the Brussels patsy over the EU negotiations. He's trying to shut down the protest, saying, it's not the way we do things here, folks. It's not Irish. Really? I think mums and dads being concerned about their daughters is a common, completely understandable anxiety all over the world. Ireland, the United Kingdom, anywhere, Mr. Leo Varadkar. And no one's suggesting that Ireland is far right. Just concerned mums and dads. Do you see what's happening here? Elite politicians, not a clue what's going on in the real world, and the mainstream media are trying to prevent decent, lawful protest by concerned local mums, local dads. They're trying to smear, they're trying to label, they're trying to prevent. And then you've got communist far-left groups deliberately agitating for trouble. Funny how the Labour Party, the Lisa Nandis of this world, they never call it out. They never say the communists are here, they never say Antifa are here. No, funny that, isn't it? Yeah, these anarchists, these communists. Now, the truth is that I'm very concerned for these local mums, dads, and their children. I'm concerned politicians trying to shut down debate, trying to shut down lawful protest to disguise their own incompetence. And in giving this sermon, I would now be labelled even more far right than I've previously been labelled. Again, this is just childish language. I mean, does that mean that anybody who's left of sort of centre-ish, that I should call them a hard left communist? It's not exactly helpful, is it, to resolve the challenges the nation faces? But then I'm used to this. Because it turns out, whilst I was away, this is unbelievable, that some quango called Prevent, that was set up to tackle primarily radicalisation and extremism, Islamic fundamentalism, turns out that a much delayed report by William Shawcross into the woeful performance of this quango, that has an annual budget of 50 million quid a year, and as I say, was set up to tackle radicalisation. Well, they spend 70% of their budget not looking at the extremist Islamic fundamentalism, the radicalisation. No. They spend 70% of their budget looking at people on the right. They were looking at Jacob Rees-Mogg. It turns out, when I read the report, that they were looking at me as well. As leader of the Reform UK party, one of their main training videos as an example of extremism was about Reform UK. Unbelievable. An outrageous waste of time, of taxpayers' cash, of effort, and a complete distortion of what is the reality. I couldn't believe it. I'm absolutely steaming mad about it. Not so much for myself, but about the waste of taxpayers' cash, the incompetence, whilst extremists, they thrive amongst our midst. And the organisation set up to tackle them waste their time and waste their cash looking at sensible people on the centre-right. It's unbelievable. But this is just an indication of how badly run our country currently is. It's been a bit of a rant this morning, folks, but that's just how I feel. And here endeth my Sunday sermon.